Could you imagine a massive freeway over San Francisco's beautiful historic Embarcadero district? Well, you don't have to, because one actually stood here for over 32 years, and I have a picture of it. Built in the 1950s, this double-decker freeway once lined the waterfront from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Bay Bridge and wreaked havoc along its path by cutting neighborhoods in half and obscuring charming views of historic structures like the ferry building. This was the Embarcadero Freeway, a hideous structure many historians call, quote, the ugliest thing in San Francisco, or the city's biggest mistake. So what became of this architectural blunder, and why has it vanished from the skyline? Stay tuned to find out, as today we discover the rise and fall of Embarcadero Freeway. I'm your host Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. This video is brought to you by Delete Me. As technology has advanced, your personal information is in danger, especially if it falls into the hands of entities like data brokers. They gather individuals' data from multiple sources and sell it for profit. A complete and detailed profile is established, and it's out of your control, putting you at risk for identity theft or phishing scams. But thanks to our sponsor, Delete Me, you can stop worrying about those troubles. Delete Me is a fantastic service that will erase your personal data from people search websites. Vital information like addresses, old photos, or phone numbers can all be eliminated. Additionally, thanks to their automated monitoring system, Delete Me ensures that records won't repopulate after being deleted. It's simply fantastic. Since starting my own online journey, I've witnessed numerous cases of colleagues affected by a lack in privacy. Not to mention the things you said 10 years ago can now be maliciously used against you. Not to mention cases of phishing scams that have caused them significant financial loss. The risks are real, so it's crucial that we all take action to protect ourselves. So get 20% off Delete Me US consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/Socash and use the promo code Socash at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/Socash, code Socash. Transportation in San Francisco has always been challenging, as the city's early evolution saw it as a patchwork of docks, shacks, and planks. However, by the 19th century, the waterfront changed drastically with the construction of wharves and the ultimate landfill of the Embarcadero area. By the 20th century, a railway serviced the waterfront, and by World War II, the area was further developed with a new shipyard and other military necessities, bringing great infrastructure to the neighborhood. However, in the late 1940s, the post-war boom and America's general love for automobiles would bring sprawling highways to the city. L. Deming Hilton's master plan of 1945 served as a blueprint for things to come. In a vision that accommodated the World War II vets and their families, the city would be carved up for cars, but one of the most important priorities was an artery connecting the two most famous bridges on the West Coast. When considering how beautiful the Embarcadero historical area is today, the prospect of a freeway there seems preposterous. However, you've got to remember that in the late 1940s, San Francisco was not yet the aesthetically beautiful city we know it to be today, particularly the area down by the docks. That area was functional, industrial, and an eyesore. Furthermore, enough cars were passing between the two bridges to cause a nasty traffic backup on the surface roads of downtown. And these are the official reasons that the government pushed forward with its ambition. Even so, not everyone agreed with the idea. City officials envisioned the freeway as a critical artery connecting the Bay Bridge to the northern San Francisco neighborhoods efficiently. However, residents and local businesses brought strong objections, fearing the elevated structure would mar the city's waterfront, displace communities, and disrupt the character of historic areas such as North Beach and Chinatown. And then there were more practical concerns, like increased noise and, of course, pollution. This potential damage posed a real threat to the urban fabric of the city, and hence it fueled widespread protest and public hearings. Despite these protests and arguments, the project moved forward, reflecting the mid-20th century's focus on car-centric urban development over community considerations. Construction of the Embarcadero Freeway, officially designated as California State Route 480, began in the mid-1950s as part of a broader effort to modernize San Francisco's transportation infrastructure. From the start, the public deeply hated the idea of Route 480, and they made a major fuss about the whole prospect. Hence, to appease the public somewhat, officials scaled back their original designs slightly before approving the $45 million proposed budget. The next step was a land purchase along the route in 1953, which pushed many businesses out of the city. From there, the build contract was awarded to McDonald, Young, and Nelson Incorporated, along with a few others. In 1955, these companies initiated work on the ramps from the Bay Bridge to the planned freeway. In the meantime, bureaucrats were still attempting to work out the final route, and this was no easy task, as the blueprints conflicted with a planned state park by the ferry building. One idea was to put the roadway underground at that section, but since tunneling would have been far too expensive, the city just went ahead with the original concept, disregarding public outcry. Local newspapers complained throughout construction, frequently describing the project as atrocious or hideous. They also directed some of their angst towards the Board of Supervisors in the process, and this brought about one nice effect. In a gesture of goodwill, a compromise was reached to ban billboards along the roadway. The first section of the freeway was completed and opened in 1959, but it was closed shortly thereafter so that crews could build a new off-ramp over the next half year. This turned the city into a traffic disaster, to which Mayor George Christopher explained, quote, "It was a regrettable phase of our freeway construction." As the 1950s turned into the 1960s, this new elevated structure ran along the eastern waterfront, offering a rapid vehicle route, but little else. And here's the funny part. Even politicians, the hypocrites who pushed this project through, began campaigning on the platform that the Embarcadero Freeway should be demolished. For example, in 1963, Congressman John Shelley called it, quote, "the Harold Dobbs monstrosity," and rallied for its replacement with a parkway in his race for mayor. Then, surprise, surprise, he got the seat and did nothing. Then, in 1964, a mind-boggling crowd of 200,000 came to Golden Gate Park to protest a proposed project called the Panhandle Freeway. Their main argument was to keep recent history from repeating itself. Residents who lived nearby complained about the roar produced by 100,000 vehicles racing past their homes daily. That same year, the San Francisco Bay Guardian published a series of articles condemning the freeway's impact on the city's waterfront, galvanizing public opinion against it. The controversy peaked in 1966 when the San Francisco Planning and Urban Research Association published a critical report advocating for the freeway's removal and the waterfront restoration. This report fueled further activism and public meetings where citizens voiced their concerns and demanded action. Finally, in 1968, under pressure from community groups and civic leaders, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors considered proposals to halt further construction or even dismantle parts of the existing structure. These events highlighted the growing resistance against mid-century urban renewal projects, prioritizing highways over community well-being and historic preservation, but they didn't change the skyline. And so the story goes. Decades passed and people complained, but San Francisco was stuck with the Embarcadero Freeway. Or at least that was the case until Mother Nature intervened. On October the 17th, 1989, disaster struck. The Loma Prieta earthquake devastated San Francisco, causing significant damage and loss of life. Measuring 6.9 on the Richter scale, the earthquake collapsed the upper deck of the Bay Bridge and caused sections of the Embarcadero Freeway and the Central Freeway to buckle and fail. You see, the freeway was built in the Marina District, which, as I previously mentioned, is essentially made up of landfill. With that in mind, severe ground liquefaction destroyed critical components of this double-decker road. The earthquake caused 63 deaths and nearly 3,800 injuries across the region, with extensive property damage estimated at over $6 billion. Infrastructure damage disrupted transportation networks, leading to months of repair work and reevaluation of urban planning and building codes. Ultimately, when the dust cleared, the city elected to demolish the damaged Embarcadero Freeway forever. City officials considered what to do with the freeway. Reconstruction was projected to be astronomically expensive, while demolition and a new, beautiful boulevard would cost very little for the taxpayers. This decision was obvious, hence crews with all manner of demolition tools got to work removing every trace of the city's so-called biggest mistake. Traffic redistribution also went decently well. San Francisco's robust network of streets absorbed much of the traffic with surprising ease. As it turns out, they were under capacity before the earthquake. The public transportation network, BART, also saw an increased annual ridership by 15%, suggesting that some drivers decided to leave their cars at home. By the early 2000s, the boulevard was hailed as a monumental success, if not an example of how cities can be improved by removing freeways. The new multi-use boulevard, standing in place of where Embarcadero Freeway once ran, consists of 2 banks of thoroughfare traffic, 3 lanes going in each direction, and a streetcar line running down the center. With over 100 acres of land once again freed up by the demolition, businesses have returned to the area, and dense commercial activity now lines the streets. Housing increased by 51%, jobs by 23%, and neighborhoods were reunited. But perhaps my favorite fact is that monuments to American heritage can now be admired in all their glory, from the old ferry building to Pier 1, and there were other transformations that few could have suspected, such as the redevelopment of the old industrial South Market area, which has now become a mixed-use neighborhood. And that's the story of the ugliest structure in the history of San Francisco. Yet, I'm left with one unanswered mystery that I'm hoping you might help me solve. Does any trace remain from the Embarcadero Freeway? Are there foundations, outlines, or anything left behind? If you have the answer to that question, let me know in the comments section below so that we can make a follow-up and clarify. Otherwise, if you'd like to find out what we discover, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any updates. Until next time, I'm Ryan Socash, signing off.